Today's session is on self-development. The theme is centered around self-development. We have this program once a month on the third or fourth Saturday. It's called Saturday Musings. This is organized by the alumni office. The whole idea is some kind of a platform where the alumni, industry experts, students and faculty can interact, exchange ideas and learn from one another. That's the whole idea. This program is being live streamed across the world. So we have alums who can plug into this program from anywhere. So a very warm welcome to all of them who are logged in remotely. So before we kickstart the session, let's do it with a couple of quick questions. So how many of you out here have read some self-development book in the last 1 year? That's really, okay. Thanks. Okay. I can see some hands were not up. So self-development book anytime? Okay. So anytime lesser. Okay. Okay. So what exactly were you looking for when you were reading these books? What were you seeking when you were reading these self-development books? Any thoughts, anything that you wish to share? Pardon me?
Looking inward.
Looking inward. Okay.
Some inspiration.
Inspiration?
Being a better person.
Okay.
Being a best self.
Best self, okay. Update. It's wonderful. You know, within the last couple of minutes, you have so many different perspectives on the same subject. So all of us look at the same thing very differently. Each one has a different takeaway from what self-development means and what it can do for you. So what do you think it can do for you? Once you go through a book and, go through it, what do you think, what difference is it going to make to you as a person?
It helps in decluttering your thoughts.
Okay. Yeah.
For the first 2 days, we try to follow what they mention.
And after that, we forget. Yeah?
After that, we read the book again.
Okay.
Depends on the shelf life of what we have gained.
Okay. True. So the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, why do we wish to develop ourselves? You know, why? What is going to happen? What is it that we seek to achieve by developing ourselves? Why, right? And how do you do it is the strategy that you use. You might go for meditation, I can go for yoga, I go for vipassana, or I just sit at home and do nothing, right? So those are the strategies that we use to do something. And essentially, when you do any self-development process, the way I understand it is that you want to change the way you experience the world. You want to bring about some change in something, the way you experience. And that can be largely maybe put into a few buckets. Maybe you want to change the way you think about the world. Maybe you want to change the way your emotional states, maybe anger management for all that you want. Yeah. So, and maybe your behavior, skills. You want to develop some skills. You want to be better at communication, etc. And so you're looking for that inspiration, maybe some kind of confidence from the external, from the external world, something that will inspire you. So essentially, you're looking at how do I change the way I experience the world, and that essentially throws up a few other questions. One is obviously the strategy part. How do I do it? So which means that do I look at as a biological organism, we are interacting with the world all the time. We are influencing the environment around us. The environment influences us. So do you look at the whole experience from the inside out or from the outside in? And that provides, so you'd have two different philosophies that come into the picture, East-West, okay, maybe, I don't know. So today's session is, I just wanted to lay down the context to this discussion, to leave a few thoughts. What is self-development? Why do you want to do it? How do you want to do it? Right? What causes you to seek it? The session is split into two parts. We have a wonderful panel. The first half an hour or 20 to 30 minutes, we have Professor C. Manohar Reddy, who's just retired 10 days back. He has kindly volunteered to take this session on self-development, East-West synthesis. And the next session is for around 80 minutes. It's going to be a panel discussion. I will quickly give an introduction to the speaker, and then he shall take over. Subsequently, we'll have questions. You can, at the end of the session, you can ask questions. And panel discussion, it's open-ended. We'll go with the flow. And those of you who are logged in remotely, there is a chat window. You can input your queries there. It will be visible. The speaker and the panelists will be able to take up your questions. Professor C. Manohar Reddy completed his B.Tech in Mechanical Engineering from SV University, Tirupati. His post-graduation in Industrial Engineering from NITI, Mumbai, and his FPM from IIM Ahmedabad. He joined IMB during March 1989 and retired very recently, hardly 10 days back, as a professor in the Organizational Behavior and Human Resources Management area. Professor Manohar Reddy has been a member of the Board of Governors, Faculty Development and Evaluation Committee, PGPEM Academic Committee, and Canteen Committee. Prior to joining IMB, Professor Reddy worked in the corporate sector in corporate planning and HRD department. He played a key role as an internal change agent and coordinated a major organizational development exercise in a large public sector organization. He received training in facilitating unstructured personal growth programs from the Indian Society for Individual and Social Development. His areas of interest are personal growth and leadership development. His interests include the application of Indian approaches like yoga, meditation, in management training and education, and self-development programs. Professor Reddy has designed and conducted several executive development programs on leadership, managerial effectiveness, and personal growth. He has worked on consulting assignments to facilitate improvement and turnaround of organizations in different industries. Incidentally, Professor CMR, we have two panelists who are alums. I'm also an alum. My name is Partha. Professor CMR has been our own teacher and our professors, and we are honored to have him back. And this is probably the first session he's taking in the public domain after his retirement.
I would like to begin with a prayer which I learned as a child, which I think is meaningful even today. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrutyorma Amrutam Gamaya. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. I think some of these things are very, very powerful if we reflect on these, the essential thoughts and ideas of our great seers. Maybe it'll take 20 minutes, 25 minutes, this speech. If you have any questions, maybe at the end we can take for a few minutes. I will read it out. This I prepared yesterday, this whole speech. This is something I've been mulling over, working over the last 40 years. So it's something very close to my heart, and when I volunteered, I chose this topic because this is something I really, really feel close. So I'm going to read it out. After nearly 40 years of working, I have officially retired a few days ago. This occasion has given me an opportunity to look back and reflect on my own personal journey during the last 40 years and my efforts to gain deeper insight into the nature of self-development process. With a master's degree in industrial engineering, I was all ready to apply my knowledge and skills in optimization to the organizational context. I'll do some math and constrained optimization, this, that, and make a difference to the organization. That's how I went as a 23, 24-year-old 40 years ago. My first exposure to the corporate world came as a rude shock to me. Till then, I was oblivious of my difficulty in understanding and dealing effectively with people. I had no idea of how to deal with people in the workplace. I thought they were a nuisance. Once I realized that I have an issue with this, I got interested, my curiosity was piqued, and then on I switched tracks and pursued a journey of self-development. I got interested in the subject, and that is the beginning. This is 1977, 40 years. My first job, and that's when this got triggered. I was keen to understand others and deal with them more effectively. I was also keen on understanding myself, gain deeper insight into myself, the way I see the world, think and feel and behave, and find ways of enhancing my own intrapersonal effectiveness within myself. This journey that started 40 years ago is still continuing. It's not finished, not even close to finishing. To begin with, I started reading some self-help books. I was just trying to remember which was the first one. Then I recollected Your Erroneous Jones by Wayne Dyer. That's the first book I think maybe that time it was fashionable. I don't remember why. Subsequently, I decided to formally pursue a course in people management and human behavior, a doctoral program at IIM Ahmedabad. I switched from being an industrial engineer to organization behavior specialist. So I took several courses on understanding people and managing people as part of the doctoral program at Ahmedabad. I even took a very intense one-week workshop, a course called Personal and Interpersonal Dynamics. This was in 36 years ago. I still remember it. It was conducted by mentor and teacher, Professor Pulin Garg. He's a clinical psychologist, psychotherapist, and anthropologist. Very remarkable person. I still have memories of this intense effect this course had on me, even after 36 years. The world looked so different at the end of this one-week course. Even my perception of colors was different, as if the world looked very different. The colors, very, very different. That was the effect of that one-week course. I gained considerable insight into myself, the way I think, the way I feel, and the way I behave, which I was not fully aware of till then. There was a visible change in my behavior for a few months, thanks to somebody who said 2 days. It lasted a few months. But slowly the intensity was lost. The insight I gained into myself remained, but in time the change in behavior was not sustained. I attended many such programs over several years subsequently. I even obtained a certificate in being a facilitator in unstructured learning groups from Indian Society for Individual and Social Development. Each time I attended these courses, I gained more insight into myself. But in spite of greater insights I gained into myself, my behavior did not change as I expected. After several years of attending such programs, I had come to the not so happy realization that programs like these can give deeper insight into myself, but they don't change me. Till then, I was under the mistaken impression that if I go through some of these programs, I will come out as a wiser and more effective person, as an effective manager, leader, whatever. What I call as the engineering metaphor. I was the raw material and the program is the process, and out comes the more effective person. Input, process, output. I mean, I didn't see myself playing any active role. Somebody will do something. This engineering metaphor, I realized, is not an appropriate model for self-development. It's a very unhappy realization because I had to do something about it. It's not that somebody will do something. No books, no programs are going to change me. This was my realization. It was not very comfortable. Books and programs can give me better understanding and insight, but each one of us has to change ourselves, and this is a painstaking process. This has not been a happy thought, but I was wiser for having gained this understanding, though it took me several years to realize this. Just after graduating from the doctoral program, while working in my second job in IFCO, Fertilizer Cooperative, in the corporate planning and HR departments, some 30 years ago, I went through a period of considerable stress. Someone suggested to me that I might benefit by attending this interesting meditation program called Vipassana. It's a meditation technique that was supposedly taught by Buddha, and maybe before him, but so I attended this program. The program duration was 10 days. For the entire 10 days, we are not supposed to talk at all and do meditation as taught by them for nearly 7-8 hours a day, from early morning till 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening with breaks, and a restricted diet. All I could think of was food in those first program for 10 days. It was a difficult experience, but at the end of the 10 days, I felt very good. The program helped me to de-stress myself considerably. It enhanced my awareness of what was going on inside my head and the body. I became aware of the intense programs and conditioned patterns within myself, and also learned a way of letting go with detached awareness, a little bit, not too much. But to continue this process, it requires us to meditate 1 hour a day, 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening every day. This I could not sustain. So it tapered off once again. Around this time, I also got interested in the ancient wisdom of India, the path to enlightenment mentioned in our ancient scriptures. I tried to gain a degree of understanding of the essence of the ancient wisdom. I am a person who always questions things. While I am open and receptive, I don't take anything for granted just because it's written in the scriptures or great people said it. It has to make sense to me, either logically or through direct experience or some other way. I will not accept just because some great person has said. That's who I am. I attended yoga classes taught by Vivekananda Kendra, Jigani there. Now it has become a university. At that time it was a training center. And also a branch of Bihar School of Yoga in Bangalore, very wonderful school. I learned methods like asana, pranayama, and yoga nidra. I also attended stress management programs that made use of yogic asanas, along with methods of cultivating detached awareness. It appeared to me that these methods and techniques can be of great help in bringing changes within ourselves over a longer period of time, in terms of the way we perceive the world, how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. But once again, the irregularity in my practice limited the extent to which I could benefit from these methods. 28 years ago, I joined IIM Bangalore as a faculty member in organization behavior area. In this position, I was deeply involved in teaching students and executive subjects like people management, managerial effectiveness, personal effectiveness, while students and executives could get considerable insight into themselves through the use of concepts, questionnaires, exercises. Apparently, they seem to have great difficulty in internalizing the insights they gained in the classroom into their everyday life. Once again, I was confronted with the same issue of internalization. Why is it that people find it difficult to internalize the insight they gained And as a teacher and trainer, how can I help them to internalize this knowledge and insights they gain into their everyday life? This was a question that troubled me. This question forced me to search deeply. At that time, I came across this book on triune brain structure. Triune means 3 components, I think. According to this book, we have 3 parts in our brain: the reptilian brain, which is the automatic part, the reactive programmed part, and the mammalian brain, that's the center of all the feelings, and the third part, the uniquely human part, neocortex, which is the logical, rational, reasoning part. In different situations, one of these parts get triggered, they take charge, and our thinking, feeling, and behavior is governed by whichever part takes charge at that point of time. While all knowledge and insight resides in the higher brain, the neocortex, whatever we are learning in the classrooms in the normal course, many of our behaviors, thoughts, and feelings are programmed and are triggered by the other two parts, which are not regulated by the neocortex, at least in the short run. I call this Karna's curse from Mahabharata. Karna, he learned great skills of archery from Parshurama, but when Parshurama realized that he lied and learnt all these skills, he cursed him that you will not remember whatever I have taught you when you need it most. So the same is the fate of most of us. All that we are learning in classroom, you face the boss, you face a difficult client or a subordinate, everything is forgotten. Something else takes over. So all our knowledge and insights, we forget when we face a difficult situation and are under stress. In those situations, the deep programs that we have inherited or imbibed seem to take over. Then how can we go about changing ourselves and achieving personal growth at the deepest level? I have examined, to answer this question, I have examined Western methods of development. I have also tried to gain a degree of understanding of the Indian and Eastern methods of self-development and self-transformation. This search helped me to realize these two broad approaches can actually complement each other and help us to grow and develop ourselves to be more effective, more happy, and peaceful individuals. I have studied, I would not say I have mastered, I have studied Western approaches like transactional analysis, neuro-linguistic programming, unstructured self-group, small group-based personal growth labs, and tried to understand the underlying assumptions and methods to achieve personal growth. I have also tried to understand the underlying assumption processes in Indian and Eastern methods like yoga, meditation, and Zen Buddhism. I have found that each of them have their own unique strengths and assumptions. I tried to synthesize an approach to self-development that combines both the Western and the Indian or Eastern methods. I have even developed a course in which I try and help participants to undertake the initial few steps of their long journey of self-development. In the following pages, I will try and give a brief outline of this synthesis. It's only sketchy, it's not in depth. Western approaches like transaction analysis essentially focus on helping a person gain a deeper understanding of how he or she thinks, feels, and behaves, and identify the functional and dysfunctional aspects. Once this understanding, this insight is gained, an individual is expected to make conscious efforts to change his thinking, feeling, and behavior. Similarly, the unstructured personal growth labs help a person gain a deep insight into himself or herself, the way he thinks, feels, and behaves. Beyond that, what to change and how to change is an issue for the concerned individual. Cognitive behavioral therapy, another Western approach, tries to help a person re-examine the way he or she cognizes things and tries to reframe in ways which are more functional, together with focus on changing one's behavior. Largely, the underlying assumptions in each of these is that once you know, realize the need for change, you ought to make necessary changes, and it is up to each one of us to make the necessary change. Of course, the psychoanalytic approach is somewhat different. It assumes that our current behavior is strongly influenced by our childhood experiences, which reside in our unconscious mind, and it tries to focus on making the unconscious conscious through the psychotherapeutic process. But given the inordinate amounts of time required for this method to show results, in the current context, it seems to have gone out of fashion. Nobody has the time for many years of analytic process. To suit the modern context and shortened time spans of attention, in the last few decades, a different approach called neuro-linguistic programming has become popular. This approach promises that it can help cure people's phobias and problems in a very short time, even as short as an hour, and help enhance their personal effectiveness in very quick time. The fundamental assumption behind this method is that the way we think, the way we feel and behave is a consequence of the recordings of all our past experiences that reside in our brain in 5 senses: the visual, the auditory, the smell, the touch, and the sound. All the 5 senses. They are recordings, and whatever we think, whatever we feel, how we behave, according to them, is a consequence of those recordings. This method suggests that if we can modify the recordings of our past experiences that reside in our brain, then we will think, feel, and behave differently, and we can overcome our fears and phobias and learn to enhance our effectiveness by methods like role modeling. It also suggests that if we change our language, the way we use words and sentences, then our perceptions change and we can become more effective in dealing with other people. So there is a neural part, there is a language part, neuro-linguistic, and programming is the third. Neuro is the nerves, the brain, the repository, how the neural patterns are there. It was developed by a physicist and a linguist together, and they believe in the programming part, that it's all here. Essentially, I find from all these, there are 3 broad approaches to personal growth implied in these methods. One is we consciously change our behavior in ways we desire, even if we don't feel very comfortable in doing so. And then gradually, with practice, we will internalize these new behaviors, and the way we think and feel changes along with the change in our behavior. Focus is on behavior change. Consciously, willfully, you strive to change. You don't feel comfortable. You will feel internal resistance, but push ahead in spite of the discomfort, internal resistance. Take the help of others to nudge you if necessary. If you keep doing it, then that becomes part of you. Internalize at least some of it. And along with that change, the way you feel, the way you think will change. That's one approach. Another approach to self-development is by changing the way we think. In the first one is about doing, in the second one is about thinking. By reframing how we cognize things. And this is expected to bring change in how we feel and how we behave. We change our perspectives, the way we look at the world, and that shift in the thought will change the way we feel, the way we act. That's the assumption. The third approach is to change the way we feel. The focus is on changing our feelings. By overwriting on the recordings of our past experiences in our brain through certain techniques of visualization, and once this happens, our feelings change, and this can lead to we can let go of our dysfunctional behaviors and learn more functional behaviors without much of an internal resistance. The behavioral focused change there is an internal resistance. In this, what they say is once you change this internal programming without effort, without too much effort, you will change. There is no internal resistance. This is the NLP approach. Of course, the fourth broad approach is making the unconscious the conscious, surface the hidden aspects, exposing the roots of our deeply seated past conditioning, thereby loosening the grip of the past conditioning on our own current behavior. Each of these approaches has their pluses and probably their limitations. They work well in some situations and not as well in other situations. On the other hand, there is an entire set of Indian or Eastern approaches which seem to be based on very different assumptions, like yoga, meditation, bhakti, karma, jnana marga. They all have their own strengths. While some of the underlying assumptions to self-development and self-transformation may be similar to the Western approaches, there are also some other underlying assumptions which are radically different. I will elaborate them in the next few pages. I would particularly like to bring to your notice the four paths to liberation, which is well quoted. The path of jnana, the path of bhakti, the path of karma, and the path of Raja Yoga. Our great sages have suggested we can use any or an appropriate combination of these methods to achieve self-development and self-transformation. The path of jnana, the path of intellect, is somewhat similar to what is suggested in methods like transaction analysis, essentially gaining deeper intellectual understanding by studying scriptures and debating and discussion. And once we know what is the right path, right conduct, follow to achieve self-development by learning to behave appropriately. But it's not limited to that. It goes beyond this. As succinctly explained by Sri Ramana Maharshi, if the intellect is made use of to stun itself, in the Western methods we use intellect to understand ourselves. In Indian approaches also we use it partially, but they go deeper sometimes. If the intellect is made use of to stun itself by persistently asking questions like, who is this I? Who am I? Ramana Maharshi, very eloquently argues in a few slokas, in a few passages. Who is this I you're talking about? And keep at it, persist. Or the famous Zen koan, what is the sound of one hand clapping? It's a very, very famous one hand clapping. What's the sound? There's no answer to that. It's a question. You keep thinking, and at some time you get fed up. And then something happens. So the intellect gives up. Then at some point one may gain an extraordinary insight into the one's true nature, which is beyond the ordinary intellectual comprehension. A satori, a sudden revelation of one's true nature might get triggered. This to me is the path of jnana, jnana marga. The path of bhakti, on the other hand, focuses on transcending one's attachments to people and things by sublimating one's emotions in a transcendental being or self. This too might lead to a fundamental transformation in an individual. I take this as the path of emotional culturing, which too is essential in my view for a holistic self-development. I think we have focused too much on our intellectual understanding and intellectual development, the way our education system is. It's a very limited view. There are many parts to us, which I will articulate later, which our ancient scriptures talk about briefly. Emotion is as important as intellectual understanding, and how do I develop and master my own emotion? How do I experience? So bhakti is possibly aimed at developing, using the emotion as a path for self-transformation. Then there is a path of karma, action. There are experiences and conditioned ways of thinking and feeling, sanskaras and vasanas, which are not always amenable to change through the path of jnana or bhakti for some people. For some people, the path of karma, the practice of doing, action, engaging in an activity with a sense of detachment over a long period of time might be a better approach to overcome dysfunctions in one's thinking, feeling and behavior, and learn more functional ways of thinking, feeling and behavior. If you go to any ashram, you will find many people who want to go on the path, spiritual development. They are put into this cooking, cleaning, washing, gardening for a number of years. People must be wondering, why are they? Why are they not teaching this? But this is another path to self-development, which is possibly, has its own strengths and effectiveness. Over a period of time, this path may help create in a person new and more functional ways of thinking, feeling and behavior. There are other people for whom the path of Raja Yoga and meditation is probably the most appropriate path of developing oneself and achieving self-transformation. In this path, the focus is on the very nature and functioning of mind, not so much on mental contents. It is the mental processes and learning to master the way the mind functions. Oftentimes, we are slaves to our mind. Mind is not slave to us. So, the Raja Yoga, I think, aims to not become a slave to the mind, the conditioned mental processes. Instead, gain mastery over the mind. Various methods like pranayama, pratyahara, and particularly dhyana, dharana, and samadhi are aimed at mastering and transcending the mind. At the level of everyday world, this is a path to learn to become one-pointed and develop greater focus and master the mind rather than be slave to the mind. This will undoubtedly enhance one's personal effectiveness. At another level, ultimately, this path is aimed at going beyond the mind itself into a state of samadhi, which is expected to bring in a radical transformation in the deepest core of a person, like the examples from our ancient past of Valmiki and Angulimala, who were one was a hunter, another was a dacoit. They have become very remarkable, different people. There is another framework from the Taittiriya Upanishad that I particularly like from the point of self-development, the concept of Panchakoshas, the physical body, the Annamaya Kosha, the vital energy system, the Pranamaya Kosha, the conditioned self that has strong cravings and dislikes and exhibits conditioned behavior, Manomaya Kosha, the intellectual wisdom aspect of us, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and lastly the aspect of blissfulness, Anandamaya Kosha. What I find interesting is the realization of the Upanishadic seers that all these aspects are essential components of an individual, and self-development ought to involve ways of training and transforming each of these aspects, the body and the vital energy, through methods like yogasanas and pranayama, discipline and train the conditioned self, what Freud calls the id, to develop detachment and self-regulation through different meditational techniques, and the intellect through the study of scriptures and other books and through debate and discussion, and lastly the final aspect of Anandamaya Kosha through emotional culturing, through techniques of visualization and bhakti. I find this integrated and holistic approach to self-development and self-transformation a far superior approach than focusing on just one aspect, primarily addressing the intellectual dimension. Some of the visualization methods suggested in the modern techniques like NLP have actually been discovered and practiced by our ancient seers for thousands of years. An age-old technique called metta or Maitri Bhava is the practice of cultivating positive feelings towards oneself and others, which transforms the way a person feels about oneself and others over a long period of time. NLP practices something similar to change how one feels. Vipassana and other meditation techniques like mantra japa are aimed at helping a person develop an enhanced capacity to focus, to be aware, and to learn to detach from conditioned behavior. There are also other ancient techniques which are esoteric, Vajrayana techniques, which are aimed at letting go of conditioned ways of thinking, feeling, and acting and become free to respond to any situation with true autonomy rather than slavishly react in conditioned ways. If you have tried, you would have realized we are stuck in ways of thinking, perceiving, feeling, and acting. We have a degree of autonomy, but not too much. And any shift from that ways we already have internalized is very difficult. It's an uphill task. How do we let go? So there are some of these meditation techniques. There are also these Vajrayana techniques which consciously help people to learn to, it's like an actor who can switch roles at ease. So one has to learn to switch from different ways of thinking and feeling, which we are not used to. And some of these Vajrayana techniques are intended to help us to become loose. In a way, loose. A sense of self-identity becomes very, very loose. I can switch comfortably, but it takes a lot of internalization, but they have methods and techniques for it. Net, my efforts to understand and find a synthesis of the Western and Indian or Eastern approaches to self-development and self-transformation has been a fascinating 40-year journey so far. It has been an exhilarating journey, and I intend to pursue it for the rest of my life, whatever it remains. While I have achieved a degree of intellectual comprehension of these various approaches and methods, it would be dishonest on my part to say that I have mastered all or any of these methods. I am just a novice who has a glimpse of the many possibilities of these different approaches to self-development and self-transformation. I have not even graduated from LKG, lower kindergarten, in terms of actually internalizing these approaches. Each one of these possibly will take many years and decades to master. I have been able to take bits and pieces from these different approaches and sporadically practice some of them to enhance my own personal effectiveness, just a little bit. Once in a while, I practice a bit of Vipassana meditation. Occasionally, I indulge in Yoga Nidra. They are available online. You can just listen and become wonderful. Sometimes I practice pranayama. At times I practice mantra japa. I chant Om. Occasionally, I practice some visualization techniques. All these together have helped me to develop myself and enhance my personal effectiveness just a little bit. But I am absolutely convinced about the efficacy of these methods for self-development and to achieve self-transformation. If a person pursues and persists in practicing these approaches, whichever suits his temperament with a single-minded focus, I think there is a lot of hope, but it requires perseverance and focus and diligence. I fell short on some of these things. So with that, I would like to end my speech. Thank you very much for the patient listening. Wish you all the best in your own journey of self-development and self-transformation. Thank you.
That was a wonderful, wonderful session, fairly comprehensive, provided us the perspective in terms of different lines of thinking, and the professor has given us many options to self-develop. You can look at different techniques, both Western and Eastern, and pick up something that suits your circumstances. Thank you, Professor. Yeah. Let's now, kind of running short of time, so let's quickly, I'll do the intro of the panelists and then invite them over to the stage. Yeah, we have 3 panelists. 2 of them are alumni. Welcome, both of you, back to campus. And we have a 3rd person, very interesting, Jay Narayan. Okay, I'll start off with Anuradha Narasimhan. She belongs to the IIM Bangalore 1992 batch. She's done a BTech from IIT Bombay in 1990. Anu is a marketing professional with 24 years of experience in creating and nurturing brands in diverse categories like consumer products, lifestyle, telecom. She has worked in India through her career and led marketing and innovation for marquee brands such as Titan, Hutch, Lakme, Britannia. She was the CMO of Britannia Industries, which is India's oldest food company, and helped build the health credentials for the company. Prior to Britannia, she worked with the Unilever Group, Hutchison Telecom, and Tata. She prides herself in having mentored marketing professionals and, more importantly, women leaders. She has won advertising and marketing awards for work on the telecom brand Hutch and Britannia's health brand NutriChoice, and has been featured as a leading marketing professional and women leader in India. Anu is now pursuing a doctoral program from Singapore Management University with the intention to unlearn and relearn in a dynamically changing environment. She's an engineer from IIT Bombay, I already mentioned that. She's happiest meeting people, solving problems, and volunteering for causes. Welcome, Anu. Invite you to please join us. The next panelist is Sanjay Dutt. Sanjay Dutt belongs to the IIM, is an alum, IIM Bangalore 93 batch. 19 homes, 12 intercity moves, 5 jobs, 1 flirtation with a startup, 2 marriages, 1 divorce, 3 kids, and 1 lingering passion for people development. That's Sanjay Dutt's life since leaving IIMB in 1993. The embarrassing delight of topping the batch in the first trimester was soon followed by the realization that while he enjoyed looking accomplished, he still does, the slog kept him away from what he called good life. So soon followed a gradual decline in grades and the ascent of teen patti sessions. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar, the cards, travel and staging a Hindi play production. After campus, he worked with Feedback Consulting, Wipro in corporate planning, Anderson Consulting, A.T. Kearney, and Infosys, where he was in the business development role in the US in 1999. He quit Infosys in 2006. The first stormy clouds became visible to him in early 2004 when the delight of being elevated to the top management team in Infosys was short-lived. Alongside with the tensions of stressed relationships at home that brought declining well-being despite conventional success. A voluntary divorce from the corporation and a divorce at home is how the storm finally showed up in 2005-2007 time period. And thus appeared the question, who am I? And search for his own meaning of life. A quest that has taken him to human process labs, Vipassana, long distance running, and workshops. His current vocation is being a leadership coach and consultant. He enjoys that he finally brings all of himself to his work, competence, relationships, philosophy, poetry, theater, travel experiences, and his own sense of life's purpose. Sanjay, welcome. The third person, very interesting, is again Jay Narayan. Narayan has educated, entertained, and inspired thousands over the last decade with his energetic, witty, and motivational speeches and incisive training programs addressing audiences from corporate organizations to colleges and more. He comes with close to 3 decades of industry experience in various professional fields such as corporate training, design and architecture. He's a qualified architect from the JJ School of Arts, Mumbai, and he has an MA in design and architecture from Osaka University, Japan. He spent 17 years in Japan, and he worked as a designer in a creative marketing agency. He has also taught communication skills at Berlitz, Japan for 2 years. He returned to India due to his progressive vision loss and continued to pursue a career in soft skills training and teaching Japanese. In his most recent 10-year corporate role as Senior Manager Learning and Development, he helped design, develop, and deliver in-house soft skills training programs on campus to corporate transition, communication skills, business and professional behavior at work, country-specific cross-cultural orientation programs, team building, presentation and public speaking skills, Japanese language, and cultural etiquette. Jay also is a Toastmasters International Advanced Communicator Gold certification and has numerous awards in Toastmasters speech contest since 2004. He was a runner-up in the International Speech Contest 2016. Welcome, Jay. Please join us on the... So Jay, I met him just recently, absolutely inspirational guy.
To begin with, I would like each one of the panel members to make a short, presentation of their own, as the title says, my personal experiments, learnings, and experiences on self-development. In fact, this is the title I gave to Partha, because lecture I have already given. But I would like people to share their own experiences, successes, failures, what worked, what didn't work, what they went through, because that's far more meaningful. I'm very glad that these 3 distinguished panel members are here. It's very, very appropriate, I think, for this context. 2 of them were my students who got A in my course. And I remember both of them very distinctly. And I'm very glad a person like Jay, who has overcome the handicap and has done such remarkable things, is here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
So it becomes far more meaningful for each one of us when we have these people who have lived in this world and worked with the various difficult situations and overcome ups and downs and succeeded. And one is the success in the world outside, the other is the inside part of it. So I would like them to share their own life journeys in their self-development and where they are, what they see as they have learned from this, and what are the dilemmas they have gone through and how they have dealt with and what they are going through, if they feel comfortable.
No, I think we're all mic'd up,
Okay.
Professor. So I will start if that's fine with you.
Yeah.
I realized after listening to Professor Reddy for the last half an hour how I'm not even in LKG and very far from LKG of self-development. So forgive me, but a lot of what I will speak is more about self-awareness and self-development in the context of being a corporate employee and a leader in the corporate world. I think the part of self is still to come, and I've learned a lot listening to you, and I intend to go read. But at least as far as today's panel is concerned, you'll hear a little more about working together as being the need for self-development. My first experience was actually CMR's course. I was an engineer who would come here from IIT, and I knew my calculus and I knew my math. And one of the assignments, or actually I think the main assignment in CMR's course was to write an essay about oneself. It was called I, Me, Myself. Yeah, that was I think it was the largest part of his course. And the first time, and he said this to us almost in the first or second week, and said the submission is 3 months away. And he said, how long can it take to write, 6 pages, 7 pages, or whatever was the expectation? And it was such a struggle to get beyond one paragraph. We knew so little, I knew so little about myself, so I think that 3 months was spent asking questions. And I realized I couldn't have done that without having a sounding board. So Smita, a friend of mine, she and I used to talk to each other, and that's how self-awareness, the journey of self-awareness started. Then, of course, companies are, I don't know if it was fashionable in the 90s, Professor, to do workshops and courses in self-development. So been through the Eastern versions, been through several of the Western components of self-development. The first one that Titan did was take us offsite somewhere and tried doing a smaller version of the Vipassana, which was just be by yourself, don't talk, and forget 10 days. I couldn't manage 1 hour. It was so difficult to not make eye contact with people, talk to some trees and bushes and so on. So that's the second part of self-development. Worked with Unilever, which was very keen. A lot of companies understand that effectiveness increases with self-awareness. I mean, so a large part of perhaps what you will hear me is more self-awareness than self-development. And so introspection, organized methods of introspection, sharing methods of introspection are things that I have done. My book, or the one I remember, I don't know if it's the first one, but the first set of books I remember are called First Break All the Rules and Now Discover Your Strengths. They're written by Gallup, an organization called Gallup, and people who worked in that organization. And it comes from knowledge. And I realize when you hear me speak, it will all be at the intellect level. Haven't reached bhakti or karma or Raja Yoga is very far. But a lot of it is coming only from the wanting to learn, wanting to understand the kind of level. I'm going to tell you 3 or 4 questions that I've grappled with through my career. And maybe then Jay can speak and we can come back. So some of the questions which have been in my head as far as self-awareness and development is concerned is, do you bring the same self to work? And are you a different person at home and are you a different person at work, or is it the same person? How does it work better, etc.? So that's one question, and I can tell you after 25 years of working that I have some answers on that one. The second question that I have struggled with is, and I have a lot of weaknesses, and I don't even think about them as the euphemistic word called areas of opportunity. They are weaknesses. I mean, I don't even want to kid around or beat around the bush or what is and my personal ones are about impatience, temper, trying to do too many things, having standards that can be cruel to self and to others. So the question has always been, should one play to strengths or should one keep solving for weaknesses? Which works better in the organizational and individual kind of context? The third question is about what is self-development about? Is it about how I experience myself or how others experience me? So which is the one that is more important to solve for? Living at peace with oneself, so I think you called it intrapersonal effectiveness. So I think at least in the corporate world, one has tried to solve for interpersonal effectiveness. I think the intrapersonal is a journey one needs to kind of start. The other is not understood well enough. The Indian or the Eastern philosophy of mind and body are finally the same thing. So I have consciously prided myself that it's mind over body. And therefore, if I school my mind, if I train my mind, I can do what I want to do. And that simply doesn't work. That's the one thing I know I have an answer for. It simply doesn't work. Yeah. So a couple of learnings, and I'll then pass on. What's worked is authenticity. So if there is a cornerstone or if there is one anchor to who I am, is authenticity. I can live with who I am in whatever my weaknesses are, but can't be a different person altogether. That does not work for me at all. The challenge on the self-development part has been, what is the trigger? So does one wait for a trigger to come from circumstance? Or does one wait for a trigger to come from the external environment? Or is the trigger internal? And if the trigger is internal, then the next question is, what is the goal? Is the goal to be happier? Is the goal to be more effective? Is the goal to be more at peace? And having not really struggled on either achievement or success or happiness, that trigger has been difficult to come by. And it's a failure, it's a failing. I don't know if it's a failure, but it's certainly a failing, which is, does self-development come from a circumstance, come from always a disadvantaged circumstance? Does it come from a space of not being able to do something? How does one build this trigger and want to reach the next level of happiness, of fulfillment, of effectiveness? And how can one self-impose that trigger? So that's my journey of self-awareness and self-development.
Thank you, Anu. Very interesting. The failings of success is what I am hearing.
Yeah.
When you are so successful and happy, then why do you need anything else? So, very interesting. Well, as we go along, we will see, what. Let's listen to what Jay has.
Is it me, or would you like those who have been there, done that at IMB to speak first?
No, there's no need that. You can do it.
Thank you so much, Professor. My name is Jai Narayan. Well, you can call me anytime. I would be happy to connect. Before I actually get into the nuts and bolts of what self-development means to me, I would like to hear a shout-out from all the audience in front of me. I don't see anyone right now. So can you say yes if you're physically present in this room right now?
Yes.
Well, that was reassuring, but I would be even more reassured if you let me know if you're mentally present in this room right now.
Yes.
Because I don't want half of you to still be wondering if India can make it to the finals of Champions Trophy. The answer to that question is maybe, but we won't discuss that now. I strongly do believe that it is not who we are that matters. It is who we choose to be. And by the way, that is from the Kung Fu Panda. And it doesn't get any more oriental and philosophical than what the panda or the Shifu, Master Shifu or Oogway have to say. So I thought that's very profound and powerful. And over the last few years, especially my stay in Japan for nearly 17 years, which is nearly, well, 1/3 of my life so far on planet Earth, I've realized I've given a lot of thought to what self-development is, especially with having to deal with or cope with this ongoing challenge that I had in my late 20s. To put it, I think, or wrap it in a nutshell, I think it's got a lot to do with the time you spend with yourself in thought. And I think it's to do with introspection. A gentleman in the earlier when we started, when Partha asked, what does it mean to you? Self-development. One of you said reflection. And that is very true. I think it's got a lot to do with introspection. But in the last 20 minutes or so, listening to the professor speak and to Anu right now, I've come to an idea, a little concept I'd like to share with you right now. Sure. I think it starts with introspection and creating what I would like to call my personal brand. Now, what do I mean by my brand here? It is, how does the world perceive me? So what is brand Jai then? Just as we have corporate brands and we have product brands, we have service brands, how does the world perceive me? I think I've given a lot of thought in the last few years to what is the personal brand I want to create for myself. And in order to do that, I guess it all begins with an introspection. Now, who do I want to be? Once I realize that possibly these are some of the perceptions that the world has about me, if those perceptions are positive, I would like to then reinforce that, leverage upon that, and make sure that I accentuate that as being part of the Jai brand. If they are negative, I would like to reflect on that to see why it was so, if there's anything I can do about it, or is it something that was purely perception? End of the day, the equation that I realized was powerful for all of us here, from those who are actually joining us in cyberspace, it's got to do with that perception being reality.
Okay.
So if that perception is reality, and if it's good, then I reinforce it and make it stronger. If that perception is not positive, then I work on it and make sure that I correct that. So it all begins with introspection of my brand. But that's where I thought in the last 15 minutes, it doesn't stop there.
Sure.
Once you introspect, what I then realized we have to do is we improve. Because once we know what the perception is, we improve on that perception, and finally, we internalize, which is what the professor earlier spoke about, internalization, right? And here's the beauty, ladies and gentlemen. Many of you are probably not going to believe me when I say this, but you'll just have to accept the fact that it's the truth. On my drive into this campus this morning, I realized that self-development to me, which was I introspect my brand, was IIMB.
Nice. Oh, nice.
Honestly, it was an aha moment for me. There was a light bulb that actually lit up over my head without chewing on Mentos. Okay? Hang on. I introspect my brand. I internalize my brand and I improve my brand. It was all IIMB. So ladies and gentlemen, you are all at the right forum, at the right place when it comes to self-development. I think you'd applaud yourselves for that. So, and then I realized that I then went back to a little bit of all the basics that I had garnered or actually, assimilated in my tenure in Japan, which was as east you can get to, you can go. And many of you in this room here would be very familiar with the 5S of Japanese workplace management, very popularly, I think, called aesthetic management. I'm speaking here of Seiri, Seiton, Seiso, Seiketsu, Shitsuke. Yeah, many of you are shouting, speak English, Jai. Yeah. A very loose English translation would be to sort things out first, and then to store and stack them, to shine and standardize, and the last one, self-discipline. And over the years, I've focused on the last self-discipline aspect of workplace management. And I realized that unless you have the discipline to do things that you have to do when it has to be done, there is no point in learning anything from books or from forums such as this. And you need to have the discipline to implement learning, because to learn and not do is to not learn at all, is my belief. To know and not do is to not know at all, is my belief. So the self-discipline aspect of the 5S is something that I have actually internalized in my own life, especially because of the challenges I have. Sure. As someone who cannot see now, if I don't know where things are, I'll be spending, I think, more than half my lifetime looking for something. Sure. So I have everything in place, and there is a place for everything. And this indirectly has made me become a little more organized, systematic, methodical, someone who's very process and protocol-oriented. And it's a very effective way of living, I believe, while not losing one's identity and being creative at the same time. So self-discipline is something I picked up from Japan. The other thing which very Japanese, very often, very well-known word for all of you in this room, I think, Kaizen. And Kaizen, of course, very loosely translated is daily improvement. But I have an interesting take for all of you today. Okay. They say Kaizen goes beyond actually daily improvement. It is not just to do with looking at a product, a service, a system, a process. Very often, it is looking at yourself. How many times do we take time off in our introspection to ask ourselves, am I better today than I was yesterday? Am I better today than I was yesterday? Am I incrementally growing? Will I be better tomorrow than I am today? Now, many of you may ask me, Jai, better at what? A better person. Better incrementally in terms of your own personal, creative, mental, physical, professional, spiritual growth. Because let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, at our ages today, our physical growth vertically has stopped. Am I right in assuming that? Yeah. Am I? Unless you put on somebody's, Katrina Kaif stilettos or something, Our physical growth vertically has stopped. Nothing stops our spiritual, mental, intellectual, creative, professional, personal, and character growth. And that can only happen, incrementally daily. And when you think about that, look at Kaizen again, and look at that again, is to take something apart, study it, put it back together, but in a better way. And if, again, as an expansion of that, if somebody in the room were to ask me, Jai, okay, I'm a better today than yesterday, better again at what? Did I thank one more person today than I did yesterday?
Sure.
Did I apologize one more time today for something that was my mistake? Sure. Did I learn from a mistake I made yesterday? And am I not repeating today? If you just look at that incrementally, I do believe that when December 31st comes around, you will be a better person than January 1st. With this daily improvement growth. And I think to me, that has been a significant focus over the last few years in my own life of first introspecting and then understanding what the perception of the world is when my brand, about my Jai brand, and then of course improving on that and internalizing it so that I become, as I keep growing vertically every day in all these aspects of my life. So I will stop here. I wish you all the very best in your own personal growths. And as Dan Millman says in his very famous book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which was also made in a movie with Nick Nolte, it is all about the journey, ladies and gentlemen, not the destination. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much. Sanjay, would you like to?
Okay, so I have the hard task of being the fourth speaker on the stage. And so many things being said, I'm like, what's the clever thing I need to say now? As I was hearing all of you, starting with Professor Reddy, I think one thing, Professor Reddy, you'll be happy to know is that something did get internalized with your course. If anything, the whole area of self and people development is something that got triggered by Professor Reddy's class. I didn't pursue it for many years. I think I wasn't ready for it. But something stayed with me since then. I still remember the exam that he gave. And we were all, all charged up for that 3-hour exam. And, the question paper will come and we'll all go off and show our cleverness into it. And he walks into the class with nothing in his hand. And he goes up to the board and he writes just one question. What did you learn from the course? 3 hours of writing that. And to me, it stays with me even till date, because I really had to go inside and ask myself that question. There wasn't any, the question wasn't testing my knowledge, it was testing me. And that's why it stayed with me. So as I reflect over my life, and thank you, Anu and Jai, some of the things that you have triggered for me. The 3 things that are that kind of are top of my mind, top of my heart right now. As Partha read out in his in my introduction, that there was a very intense journey that started about 11, 12 years back, where I changed my career and profession from corporate world to being a coach and consultant today. So I help leaders and organizations go through their own personal development journey, and this shift happened because somewhere along 2004, 2005, I felt a deep sense of dissatisfaction with what was happening in my life. And both at the professional and the personal level. And what it led to finally is to ask the question that Professor raised earlier, who am I? So for me, self-development, the very first thing is to really understand what is this self. As Professor also pointed out about who's this I. Because if I don't know that, what do I really develop, right? It will be a case of Bangalore roads otherwise, where we built the bridge and the traffic jam shifts from one place to another. That's all that happens, right? And you really haven't solved the jam because you haven't really gone to what what the basic challenge is first, and where is it coming from. So for me, I think knowing that self is very important, and what it took me to hence is many forums. I was a restless being for those 5-6 years, Vipassana and workshops and Western approaches and Eastern approaches, all of that, to really answer that question for myself. And I could so relate to when Professor said that, you become fed up, and I did. Like, how long will this go on? I go in there and do something and then come out to my life outside and like, well, there is no change. Well, it lasts for a while, and then what do you do? So that journey goes on for a while. That's one. I think the second insight for me that happened through my own journey was that I would like to differentiate between growth and development. To me, all of us have gone through the journey that we grow up physically, first of all, and we take in a lot from our environment, from our parents, from our teachers, etc. So we're taking in a lot during the growth phase. Then we do it to our intellectual growth, and we come to colleges like this, like I did, and we are again gaining a lot in terms of knowledge. And then we go out into the corporate world and professions that we seek. And there we are fulfilling yet again our needs in terms of status, in terms of gathering wealth or gathering our fame, name, whatever you call. But we are still taking in a lot. And to me, that's the growth process. And as Jay, you mentioned that we stop growing at a certain point of time and physically, and that's exactly what happens. And if you look at a tree, for example, right, it grows to a certain point of time. It stops growing. And yet life goes on for hundreds of years, possibly, for some of them. They don't grow, but they shed leaves. They have fruits. They still keep showing different colors at different points of time. And to me, that's the phase of development, because that's the time where you start becoming present to others. Till the time that you are doing things for yourself by taking in, that is growth. But it's only when you start becoming present to what the world needs around you and how the world receives you and how the world sees you is when the development really starts happening. And for me, that's really that time came 11, 12 years back, where to really stop myself and ask that question, am I living this life for myself, or what is it that's around in my world? What does the world really want and need? And how much am I present for that? And the beautiful thing there is that the more present I got to it, the more I gained for it for myself. And honestly, it's, at some level, that it is a very selfish process. If you ask me, my profession, that I go out there and go and sit in a coaching session or go with an organization, and I'm like, hey, that's me, and that's me, and that's me. And, you start seeing shades of yourself out there, and you start becoming, when I say you, I'm saying I started becoming more present to the different colors of the world and different shades of the world, and seeing how they are in me as well. And that constant process of being in the world and showing different colors and, going through different seasons of it is what has been a beautiful process and continues to grow. And the last but not the least, what self-development has meant for me is, this is it. If you think all of us are, Jay used the word been there, done that. There is no there and there is no that. This is it. And what I mean by that is that somebody said sometime beautifully that we essentially don't change. We just find different ways of looking at ourselves. And that's really what life to me is about. We are meaning-making beings. We are yearning to see some sense of growth in ourselves, development in ourselves, and we just keep finding ways of looking at ourselves. And to me, that is the most rewarding process of self-development, that where you start seeing parts of yourself and start owning them up and playing with them and really enjoying the process of saying, hey, what a fool am I being in this right now, or hey, I can actually do this. And you know, all of that possibilities that you see in yourself through the eyes of others, through how the world reflects back to you, is just an amazing process of existence. And to me, hence, the journey of self-development is really about coming more and more into the here and now. It's really about living life right now into its fullest. I had the benefit, privilege, and feel quite blessed by the fact that I've had teachers in my life who helped me define my purpose in my life. And for me, that purpose has become what I call being fully there. Can I be fully there every time for everything that's there in my life? And that's my journey right now, being fully there, and I'm hopefully being fully here right now.
Thank you, Sanjay. Now, after listening to the four of us for the last hour, I guess, or 50 minutes, or more than an hour, I think. So you may, several thoughts may be going through in your minds. There may be questions you have, or maybe things you want to add, if it is appropriate to this particular theme and topic. So any questions, any of you? Some are online, but let's take here, the people here first. Yes?
This is more to do with the professional integrity that faces us day in and day out with respect to our respective work areas. Recently, India played a cricket match against Pakistan. The match was being played when our soldiers are getting martyred. So, how does this professional integrity work? What I presumed was, the moment the toss was done, they would have walked out. That is what I presumed. But they went ahead and played. So what is your take on this concept of integrity? Point one. Point two, sir, very, very quickly is that I would like to make a point with respect to Mr. Sanjay Dutt when his profile was being read out. Normally we speak of upheavals in our professional life. You know, we lost that, we gained this and all. But he also brought in his personal life. And I would like to say that it is the most honest thing, which is very common today, but nobody speaks of. Probably what he spoke of was very common, like more common than a rainy days in monsoon. But then my respect to the concept of honesty and integrity tremendously went up when that particular attribute was brought. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Sanjay Dutt. And I would request the answer to my question on the professional ethics and integrity part. Thank you.
I don't know to whom you addressed, but let me...
To the panel. I would leave to the panel.
So let me say this much. The three words that come, manasa, vacha, karmana. What you think, what you speak, and what you act, if they are the same, that is integrity. Very rarely do we see that. You know, I don't, very, very exceptional individuals who are able to do it all the time. The way I look at it, I'm not going to comment about the cricket match and about the killing and all that. I'm going to talk about myself. It's not easy to speak what you think and to do. You know, there is integrity. There are times one is pulled between the tensions of what will others think if I speak what I have in mind, if I do something. How will it affect me? But at the same time, I also have learned the need to be sensitive. You know, I used to call, when I was 25, I used to call a spade a spade. This is what I teach in my class. But I also used to call a fool a fool. Now I have become wiser. I still call a spade a spade. I don't call a fool a fool. I just keep quiet. I mean, I think he's a fool. Whether he is or not doesn't matter. But I don't necessarily tell you are a fool. So is that integrity? You're talking about integrity. Go back to Mahabharata, Aswadhama, Hataha, Narova, Kunjaraha. What is the integrity of Yudhishthira? So where do we draw this line? It's very, very difficult. And instead of, I think you are asking a very provocative question. Yeah. It would be far better for you to look into yourself than provoke others. Okay, when I look at it, it's not easy. I try. And people don't always like your being authentic. But for me, it is important. But there are times when I can't say something, I keep quiet. That's the way I manage. Do I tell, no, I hate this person, I say, I love you, you are my friend? I don't do it. So there are degrees to which, so to me it's a degree rather than a 0 or 1. There are great people like Harishchandra or whoever in the, our ancient scriptures, and they talk about stories of them. But it's a process for me. That's what I would like to say. Yeah. Anybody else? Sanjay?
Yeah, for me, when you said use the word integrating, the first thing that came in was that the moment you talk about integrity, there is assumed fragmentation. And to me, if there is fragmentation, that's where the exploration starts. At a self level, in the system, wherever it is, because if fragmentation has happened, then it talks about there must have been some force, there must have been some kind of rigidity, which kind of, because you need, if something shatters, it has to be a rigid object. So all of that exploration is where I would go, and I would agree with Professor that then it says something about myself, and say, why do I see what I see out here? And can I be just fully present to that? The more I get present to that, the more I realize that what I know is actually very little.
Thank you. Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Firstly, I would like to get the name of the person who asked the question. I'd like
sorry,
to
I didn't introduce. I am Girish from the EGMP batch 2007.
So would you just ask the question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, very briefly, Abraham Lincoln once said, I don't like that man, I must get to know him better. So if you look at that thought, I think it's very powerful in its simplicity. While we will not debate whether what happened on the cricket field was right or wrong, and firmly, Girish, I am not someone who believes that we should mix politics, religion, and sports. They all have their own place. I don't see any reason why any good will be achieved with Kohli walking off with his men after he had the toss had happened. I just believe all the more reason we play to the best of our potential and see what these teams are all about. Number one. Number two, integrity, which is the word you used here. Firmly, personally, I believe integrity is got to do with what you are even when nobody's watching, which is also very often a loose translation of leadership. So if you are doing the right thing in that moment, I think you are a person of integrity. So I think I'll leave it at that for now. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all panelists for wonderful contribution. My name is Kshitij Sharma, and my question is to Professor Reddy. So thanks for sharing your beautiful journey right from the erroneous zone to the Upanishads, the various koshas that you talked about. My question is, what is spirituality, and what is the role of spirituality in self-development?
Oh. For me, there is no difference between spirituality and self-development. They are the same.
Okay.
People have marked it off in two different things. One is about the other world, etc. This is self-development is for this world. There are definitions like that in the minds of people. If I look at the essence of what I understand, I don't claim to be a master. As I said, I'm only at the LKG, I'm a novice, but that's what I know and that's what matters to me. So from my understanding of that, I feel the essence of spirituality and spiritual development is about releasing ourselves from our conditioned, programmed ways. We are conditioned and programmed either by genes or by childhood experiences or past whatever experiences. The way we think, the way we feel, the way we act is a conditioning. There is a programmed ways, and some of them are very dysfunctional. For ourselves, for the other people and the rest of the world, the entire exercise of spirituality, spiritual development, enlightenment, is about letting go of conditioned ways of thinking, feeling, and acting. You become free, autonomous, without programs taking over. This is how I interpret. With this, to me, liberation, moksha means this. If that happens, that is what is self-development. I don't draw any line between effectiveness in this world and the other world. I'm not sure about that, what the other world is. For me, it is all the same. Yeah, anybody else would like to answer? Sanjay? Or no?
I have a
Yeah,
continued question.
yeah.
There is something about Eastern learning and development
Okay,
which almost seems to suggest renunciation.
sure.
So, can you help reconcile that? It almost suggests you have to give up something to gain something.
Okay.
And and it comes from poor knowledge. So, if the question itself is incorrect,
No.
please.
My knowledge is not much better, but
Yeah,
I'll take
so-
the freedom, liberty to,
Yeah, so- so
blind man walking around maybe, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one, and it's almost, and the ultimate form of renunciation is the vanaprastha and whatever.
Right.
So help reconcile that the Indian Eastern methods help us effective in our current and ongoing lives. That's the primary question, really.
my limited understanding, I must start with that because
Sure.
I don't consider myself as very knowledgeable, but it is all for myself, this
Sure.
understanding,
Sure.
not so much to preach to others, is there are two paths to liberation.
Yeah.
One is through renunciation, the other is through action.
Yeah.
So they advocated one path is keep away and slowly learn detachment.
Yeah.
You go into caves, you go into monasteries and live there and keep away from. And because to be engaged, it's very difficult to detach. So it's a practice to help oneself to learn to detach. The other is the path of karma yoga, or the action. While being active, by being the CMO of Britannia or whatever, can I still renounce internally?
Yeah.
Which is a more difficult path actually than the path of being in the caves and
Detached,
closing your eyes and meditating, because there is no external stimulus. So the test of these people in the caves is ultimately when they come back, if they come back, and how they can live their lives in this world with, if they can
Yes.
bring that into
Into-
the everyday life,
yeah.
they have, to me, reached a higher stage. Otherwise, when there is no external stimulus, it is possibly relatively easier to go in and to move, develop ourselves. But the test is this. But many of us find it difficult to renounce internally, even in the moment of action, while being busily engaged in action. It's an extremely difficult thing.
Yeah.
And therefore, possibly, in the olden days, they have advocated move away.
Move away.
Also, in the scriptures, the way some of them have framed, there are two paths, two issues. One is this world is not important. There is another
That's right.
transcendental.
That's right.
So that's a paradigm which some have propagated or promulgated. There are others who say this world is important. Let us take care of our family, the grahasthashram, the whole,
The world.
So there are both thoughts have been there. I guess they try to balance. My understanding is if everyone renounces, there won't be any human race. There will be no one to renounce.
That's true.
Right.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that answered my somebody asking.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Bhaskar Sharma, and I'm from EGMP, recent batch. So my question goes back to Professor Reddy again. It was going in my mind, so this topic was very, very close to my heart, and maybe
Okay.
my whole journey till now is revolving on this question.
Okay.
I come from Himachal, so
All right.
so that's also a reference.
Okay.
I
Sacred
wanted to
land.
ask you, Professor, is it what we are fighting or what we are evolving is a quest, what is the self-development, or it is what once Carl Jung said that we are fighting our complexities. What it is really? Is it self-development, or are we fighting something and then evolving? That's a question to you, sir.
I'm not sure I understood. To me, it seems to be the same thing. We all have our programs, complexities, whatever you are calling, and some of them are dysfunctional. So if you look at effectiveness, coming back to Anu's question and linking it, in our everyday life, there are things we do. Some of them are very positive, very constructive, very effective. There are some things which cause harm to ourselves or our other people or our relationship with others, which limits our effectiveness. It may be because of the programs, the complexes inside, whatever you were saying about Carl Jung, he talks about collective unconscious and things like that. It doesn't really matter to me. Can I learn to become free? This is one thing I keep talking about. React versus respond are very, very crucial set of two words. To the extent I am reacting, and that reaction is inappropriate. Not every reaction is inappropriate, but sometimes the reactions are very inappropriate. I say something, I shout, I cry, I do something, I am scared and I can't walk. All these are inappropriate reactions in some context. So I have become a slave to these programs, whether reasons may be whatever, and they are dysfunctional. They are limiting my effectiveness. Can I let go of these things? Can I become free and learn to respond appropriately? The greater is my ability to respond appropriately to any given situation, the better I am more developed, is how I look at it. Once you are fully, I don't know, this full is only a notional thing at infinity. I'm fully, completely free internally of all this conditioning, then I am liberated. I am not, by the way. I am just struggling in terms of, there are these limitations within me. There are these programs which are running and which limit me, and in ways which I identify, this is not okay. But I'm still stuck there. How do I learn to let go and become more effective, free? So I don't know whether I answered your question, but that's all I could maybe understand. Yeah.
I think what I comprehend from your answer is that the topic itself, self-development, is to do with how you progress to the path of, becoming unconditional.
Yes.
Is that what it is leading
Yes,
to? Yeah.
yes. That's what I hope that's okay.
Can I just add to that, Professor? Yeah. Just one line.
Yeah.
To what, because you were talking about, I'm sorry, where are you standing?
He's sat
There?
there.
On your left. On my left, here? Your name again, sir? Okay. If I may just add to that, because you spoke about competing and, conflict and, all those kinds of feelings. I think in a nutshell, it's not all about competing with anyone else or conflicting with anyone else. It's all about competing with your own potential self. If you can just ask yourself one question regularly, the question is not, am I as good as him, or am I as good as her, or that person, is, am I as good as I can be? If you realize that, I think that self-realization will very, effectively contribute to your professional, your incremental and spiritual growth. Compete with your own self, not anyone else at any time. Yeah.
Bhaskar, are you okay to play along with me for a bit? Yeah? So, what is your intent of asking this question? Could you use the mic?
Thank you so much for, taking this, because I think, I was wanting to participate more.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And
so, I think, Jay, right, you said it rightly, I think why I'm saying that we all are wanting to evolve for happiness, for progress, for more acknowledgement from the world. And maybe, I think more so now, the second part which I'm realizing is how we're contributing back.
Yeah.
So I connect with you that. So the conflict was like that, whatever your upbringing, little instances better, or, triggers, I would say those triggers, that point I'm coming out of Himachal was difficult. So, trigger for me to go to Punjab University and from there being a maverick, not continuing my master's in maths. I was doing my, then moving to MBA and then working in the corporate world for another 18 years. Worked directly with promoters, came back again, second run back to my passion field, which I'm currently in retail. So the whole journey I'm fighting, is it to with me or is it to with something to do with I'm fighting against to prove something? So that's the conflict. So personal development, why this topic? I'm saying, am I doing it for myself? Or I'm trying to put a point somewhere else? Or, or is it the way it is supposed to be? That's the confusion.
So when you say the word fight, what's the threat?
Sorry?
What's the threat?
Not threat, I'm saying...
so what are you fighting?
Fighting is maybe, you're proving to something or somebody, yes, fighting in the sense, maybe you've not reached what maybe it's not clear what you want to be or, you're just fighting, I think.
Prove to yourself first, that's what I was
Yeah. So welcome to opening a door for yourself, and to me that's self-development.
Thank you so much.
We have a couple of questions, online questions. If it's okay, can I read them out?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm curating some of the questions. I'm not reading all of them out. So one question that was interesting is this one. Anshul Sood was asked the question, I think the problem lies not within us, but how we are all brought up in our surrounding. Basically, he's talking about context.
All right.
The impact on context on self-development.
Sure.
And the way you think and behave.
Is that his view, or is he asking a question?
That's
or
a question.
What is the question?
How? No, that's a view. That's a view. But how? Yeah. So
Okay. I violently disagree with this. I think this is a trick many of us play with ourselves.
Yeah.
You blame somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
You blame your father, your mother, your teacher,
Everybody
your
else.
boss, anybody else except yourself. While as a psychologist, as a sociologist, it might make sense to say, the conditioning of the past or the genes or whatever, biologists, do have their effects on us at a collective level, at a group level. If you take that as an excuse from not making a difference to your life today, you are fooling yourself. I agree that whatever past conditioning will have a certain effect, it will have certain tendencies in each one of us, which is undeniable. Even our biological inheritance will have its conditioning, it will have its effects. Even the people who are studying about human behavior say biology matters, psychology matters, but there are others who say at any given point of time, you still have choice, autonomy.
Yes.
You have a degree, you have tendencies which are, these things trigger, but you have this ability to make a choice, and you have to exercise it, you have to grapple with it, and learn to overcome these tendencies. My understanding of even when they say about the Bhagavad Gita, they do not talk about choicelessness. We have this notion in India, it is all fate karma, destiny, which implies I'm not responsible. I think it is a false understanding.
Absolutely.
While all these things affect past life, whatever you believe in, I think at every point of time there is a choice. Even the essence of Krishna's speech to Arjuna is that there is, at least my understanding of it, is there is a choice, you make a choice, and what you do today will have an effect on tomorrow, the next instant. So if you act with Nishkam karma, you become free, step by step, gradually.
Professor, one question is the awareness of the choices are available. The self-awareness that Anu was talking about. Sometimes you're in a particular context. In the upbringing could be the environment in which you're actually brought up. So when you're not aware of the, of the fact that there are choices available in front of you.
These are tricks, boss. What do you mean you are not aware?
I'm going to add a line, Anshul. I felt exactly the same way 20 years ago, and I think the awareness journey starts when you stop thinking like this. So, and I'm saying this purely from having been in exactly the same position, where I believe that I am who my parents brought up to be. So either it's genetics or how can one solve this, this is how my organization is. I think you're at the, probably in one part, I'm not saying this about your entire career or your life or whatever, but this is almost the start of the self-awareness journey, which is that I'm not the person life handed me a card for. I have many cards that I can play. So I also disagree, but I disagree not from knowledge, in a sense from a personal experience.
So I think one is, the question is, what is the impact of the environment around me on the way I think and on the way I behave in the scene? One is how I respond to that environment. How I respond, I have choices.
Say there are two questions. One is the question for a psychologist. If you are a psychologist asking this question, there is a certain meaning in it.
Yeah.
If you are asking this question in order to not look at yourself and run away from making choices, I will not allow that.
Until you got your answer.
Also, I don't think, Partha, environment is a constant. What your environment is, or is what you choose to make of it. So there is an I in what your environment is also.
Right.
So there isn't any of these which is, life doesn't hand you this card.
Yeah.
You pull out the cards that you have on your decks.
There is a short story I read in Anthony Robbins' book about this. Somebody interviewed two different individuals. One guy is in the jail for some crime, and and he asked, "Why are you in the jail?" He said, "You see, my father is a drunk, this, that, and therefore I am in the jail." He also interviewed one corporate executive who was doing very well. He asked, why? I mean, how come? What contributed to this? Yeah. He said, "My father was a drunk, this, that, and therefore I did not want to be there."
Yeah.
And both of them have the same father.
Yes. Professor, there's a very simple mathematical equation to all that we are talking about now. It is called E plus R equals O. Okay. An event plus response equals the outcome.
Okay.
Right. E is never equal to O, ladies and gentlemen. There is an R in between.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
They use as in psychology stimulus object response.
Right.
So there is a SR and there is an SOR in between.
Right.
So if you say SR, then I have no choice. If you insert yourself there, then you have a choice.
Any other questions?
Sir, I'll just give some comment on what you said. The presentation, I just have some reinforce one of your points because it's a very close thing which I discovered myself. Yeah. Started meditation 5 years back.
Okay.
So after that, in this 5 years, I realized the basis of Raja Yoga is thought power. So this practical experience, though it's said in some books also, but I've learned it practically that it's all about thought power.
Okay.
And a couple of years back, I read a series of books on very well done traders. It's called Stock Market Traders, Market Traders, Hedge Fund Traders, done by somebody called Jack Dwager.
Okay.
And the last interview of each of his books has a psychologist.
Okay.
And one of the things the psychologist highlights on successful traders is more or less some of these neuro-linguistic programming points. I never read neuro-linguistic programming separately. From what I read there, I also realized NLP is basically about thought power.
Right.
So basically, the reason for me for coming to session is this East-West synthesis.
Right.
After my personal experience, I realized that, I didn't even realize that Western components had other than NLP. Before the session, I thought it was only NLP. And basis of both is thought power. So that I really admire you highlighting in your topic, because I've actually, like you said, it's also very close to me because I personally felt that's the basis of Raj Yoga as well. And one more thing is just the last point you made. This is again a very, very, very touchy topic of mine, is about determinism versus free will. Determinism, right. God determines everything versus free will. Although, as a typical Indian, I believe both. And I also believe free will more, but I also believe in determinism. So I sort of coined this phrase that it's a deterministic rule of nature that free will works.
Okay.
We say everybody's in hands to become so-and-so. Then I say, why can't I become Lord Krishna? I mean, why didn't India had only one Lord Krishna in 5,000 years. then we'll have to go back. Maybe the deterministic rule of God is that only one person had the will to
We
become
can play
God.
tremendous number of mental tricks with ourselves.
With that. But still, sir,
intellectualization is one of them.
Sir, but still, I agree with your point that free will should be given more importance in any society because ultimately it's within our
I think
thing to shape our future.
Did you ask that question online?
No.
Free will and determinism?
No.
There's another question.
It's a person like sir. When he was talking about the previous point, I mean, such a touch point of mine. I think our society will really change when we switch over from determinism to free will, like sir said.
When you said about the traders on the stock market, I remember the people who make money also are those who can overcome their greed and fear. If they fall for the fear and the greed, they will go with the crowd and inevitably they will lose over the long run. It is only those who are karma yogis in that sense. Okay.
Incidentally, NLP, the way I understand it, is the structure of subjective experience, the study of subjective experience.
I
NLP,
wanted to.
There are primary representational systems. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Sanjay.
Yeah.
Oh, Sanjay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to it. This happened today morning and it got framed in my head. So, a domestic squabble in the morning, and it happens many times over something minor. And I was coming in the car and I was saying that, which is the other side of it, that there is a philosophy out there which says you are responsible for that everything that happens to you, right? And in my mind, I was like, for my wife, that you is me. I am responsible for everything that happens. So, where I'm going with this is that I think the journey, the question that's being raised and a lot of what's being discussed right now is that there are choices, yes. And the journey of development to me means actually exploring where you're feeling choiceless to start with. And saying, what does that really mean? And to me, the renunciation the word that gets talked about, in my mind, renunciation is held as re-enunciation. Can I enunciate what is my reality in another way to see what's my part in it and what's the part the others are playing, and then make a choice from there? So to me, it is a reality of growing up process where we all struggle through this process of choicelessness. So I can completely relate to Ankur's pain when he writes that out there. But the fact is, there are choices, and you will have to make the journey to get there.
Two things I want to relate it to. What, Anu, your old question, I suddenly remembered about renunciation and action. I read in one of the famous philosophical books of India, renunciation and action. Renunciation of action versus renunciation in action.
In action.
It's a wonderful way of phrasing it.
Yeah.
Can we learn to renounce while
in action?
While acting.
While acting.
In the moment. Most of us do it after or before, but not in the during action.
Nice.
So that is the practice which one has to learn, according to me. The other is, this choicelessness. This famous book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Right.
A thin book which talks about his experiences in the concentration camps. He was a psychotherapist who was imprisoned and he observed the behavior of people. Many people have slipped down into, survival mode. They will do anything for survival, but not all. Even in the worst circumstances, there were some people who remained humane, helpful. Their sense of autonomy and freedom they retained, even in the face of extreme adversity which we can think of. So there is something in them. You can say it is their conditioning or what, but I would like to believe that you make a choice and some made a different choice.
Sure.
And it's not easy because once you make the choice, you take responsibility. You have to fight the demons inside.
Yeah.
There are lots of programmed fears, anxieties which trigger, but that is the journey. If you believe you don't have a choice, as Sanjay was hinting at, then you can blame someone else. We can wallow in a sense of self-pity. Why hasn't my boss changed? Why isn't my wife behaving properly? But for me, the circumstance, the context, you may not be under your control, but how you respond to that is in your control. And how do I learn to respond rather than react? To me, is the biggest issue.
Professor, it goes back to the Kung Fu Panda. It's not who you are that matters, it's who you choose to be.
Right. Very well put. Very well.
The panda has a lot to say for all of us.
You
please ask.
My name is Ravi. Thank you for your candid views since the last 2 hours. In fact, I'm going to start with a small observation, and then my question is around that. The observation is, I had expected a 3-letter word to be used quite often by now. It's not occurred. It's ego, ego.
Oh, okay.
So I've heard about introspection as a starting point, looking inward and all that. And Anu made a point right in the beginning, which is maybe she needs to look for a trigger for something to happen, which is true for many people. So my question is ego one of the main reasons or impediments to introspection to happen in the first place? Or where do you see ego fitting into the scheme of things in self-development?
If you go back to the traditional Indian thought, ego is the cause of every problem. My understanding is, the sense of I Manohar Reddy, I Ravi, is an artificial construct because of our sensory equipment, because of our mental processes, and that separates us from the larger universal self, and that is the source of all our pain and misery. So when somebody asks about spiritual development, is how to let go of this artificial construct, which is reinforced by the senses and the mind, which is very deeply embedded, programmed, because our senses trigger the stimulus response. The external stimulus triggers a certain internal experience. We have not learned to detach these two, the external stimulus and the internal experience. Most of us struggle with this, and to that extent we have very little freedom of how to experience, how to respond. So the spiritual development is how to learn to develop detachment between the external stimulus and the internal experience, and therefore response. And this ego, what you are calling ego, of course is a Western definition, but I am using in the sense of I Manohar Reddy, I Ravi, I whatever, which is body and mind and my property and my position all in my head. So it has senses, it has mind, and we are all, it helps in this world to function well, but in the sense of the Indian ancient thought, you have to transcend it to really experience the true state. I don't know what it will be, how it can be done, but they have thought about it a few thousand years ago. Kathopanishad talks entirely about this. How do you rein your senses, your mind, in order to discover the true nature of yourself. So, as an idea, it appeals to me as a concept. I have no experience of what this thing is, but I really like that. But what I take from this is, can I learn to detach myself between the stimulus outside and the experience inside, and therefore respond? If someone calls me fool, can I remain at peace with myself without reacting internally first and externally? When someone says you are a great man, I feel great about it, and someone says something else. So then I am a slave to the stimulus. Can I learn to detach? To me, this is the core of the liberation, which is partly mental, partly at the level of the senses. So the renunciation, etc., are paths for this. It's a difficult path, but even a little bit we can learn, I think we are better off. That's how I see it. Whether you can become the great people, I don't know. If I have gone through, I can tell you, yes, you can do it. I have not. But I know that intellectually it appeals to me, and I know from experience, a little bit of detachment you can learn. There are times when I used to get angry when I was abused. Today, sometimes I get angry, but at times I watch myself. Maybe that person is in a bad mood. Why am I reacting to that? Can I not just watch internally? So the intrapersonal and interpersonal you talked about are interlinked. You cannot be really interpersonally effective if you cannot manage the inside, the way you feel, the way you react. Yeah.
Professor, if I can just add one line to what Ravi
please.
asked. I just want to go back to his three-letter word ego. I think in my interpretation, ego comes into this picture and escalates matters only when you take a fixated, rigid stance about something where you're not willing to let go, as the professor says. And sometimes I feel we all need to understand that loosening up does not mean you lose control. You can still be the person in control, but understand that win-win is not actually a compromise, it's a collaboration. And I think if we reflect on that, ego need not be such a, a negative thing. Just let go.
Okay. And just to add, the more comfortable you are with yourself, the more effective you can be in dealing with others. The more uncomfortable you are, you have these larger than life notions of myself, because some part of you keeps telling, not good enough, not good enough. So you are fighting yourself from, running away from this voice inside, which says not good enough. Then you are trying to prove what a great person I am. And any slight signal outside that you are not such a great person, I get worried. I mean, it's a trouble.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm Anand Agastya. I'm from 1976 batch actually, and I've met you in some of the courses.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. First of all, I think the topic was so interesting that it pulled me from Malleshwaram to here in the morning.
Thank you very much. You are taking such a trouble. And
it pulled someone from Himachal Pradesh.
And the panel was very lively. I think the subject was made more lively by your own full involvement in the whole thing. I really appreciate it. I just want to add something from my experience.
Sure.
I worked with the Navarasas actually. So
okay.
that brings in the emotion part of it. And I could connect very strongly to what you said about the response to that. Because using the folk theatre form,
okay.
I got exposed to some part of it, and maybe you could look at that aspect. So if Shantarasa actually means having all the rasas in me, not having absence of rasas. Okay. And my ability to respond spontaneously to the situation the way it is.
Appropriate.
And with being absolutely able to come back to me without any residue. That's the way I got
it.
Very nice.
And I think Navarasas is something you could explore actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And when you're saying this, I am reminded of, I saw an online video about Vajrayana meditation technique, which is very similar. Yeah. So this gentleman talks about, I forget his name, I have a reference with me. They do a 90-day meditational program. On each day, he is asked to identify with a divinity, a deity, which has different rasa. It may be wrath, anger, or it may be karuna, daya, or whatever, the various feelings. So what he does is, he thinks like that deity, there is a mantra associated with that, he chants that thing, he feels he is that deity, the body, and he visualizes himself as that deity and feels like that deity. And he does a whole day of practice. And then like that, there are several different deities which represent different forms and feelings and thinking. So every day he does this for several days. What he says is, through this practice, I am learning to switch from one to the other fluidly, comfortably. Most of us, as I said earlier, don't have the ability to switch, like in our asas, what you talked about. So when I learn to switch fluidly, comfortably, spontaneously, I lose my sense of ego. There is no this I. I am whatever it is at that moment of time. This meditational practice is intended to develop this. So to me, it's not spiritual, it is self-development. I don't see a distinction between them. Thank you.
I also wanted to add that you triggered a memory for me that in my own journey for my own development, one of the things that's been really helpful is to look at the power of mythology, because it offers so many archetypes. And to me, for example, one of the things that I've been alive to is that the archetype of Yudhishthira is so me, and then there is an Arjun sitting there who is disowned. And so there is, I think the Eastern philosophy in that sense offers so much possibility by just bringing up parts of you out there. And there are times just using imagination to say, how do I connect to this character? How am I being this character in my life? Can be such a, it can open so many doors to self, yeah.
Thank you.
Sir,
Yeah.
I have one question, sir, please.
Where?
Yeah, please. So first I would like to observe, audience, may I know how many of you are unmarried? Please raise your hands, please. I want to see. Yeah, very lucky, yes.
Lucky?
Sir, now I will come to the question. One side is the stressful management where the place we are working. The other side is the stressful family issues. I got a call now. Now, that means, are you coming for lunch? Yes, I said, yes, I'm coming. That means, one side is very stressful management where we are working, and the other side is the stressful family issues. So now you understood on which context I'm going to talk. I would like to ask the question that how this self-development exercise, what you're talking about is yoga and bhakti, all these issues will help us to bring the work-life balance, what we are. So I would like to provide some insight on this. And I don't want a win-win. I don't believe to the collaboration. Okay, I don't want a collaboration. I want the solution for the short term, and also I don't want to answer for the long term, over the period of time. Short-term solutions I'm expecting.
Short term is you leave for lunch right now.
Because, of course, I believe that in the long run we are all dead. That's what. In the long run we are all dead. That's why I'm a believer of the short run.
If I had such ready-made solutions, green pill and red pill, I would have been a billionaire by now. See, we want this work-life balance. We want to have our cake and eat it too. Yeah. That is where the problem is. I want to achieve greatness. I want to progress in my career very quickly. I want to become this and that. I also want to leave at 5 o'clock and have good time with my wife or my husband or whatever. You have to make a choice, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Whether you are willing to compromise on that for this, or if do you find another solution where this and that is possible. I don't have an easy answer for that. You have to make that. You can say, I want to be a nice husband and a good father. I will remain in a slow track and I am okay. It's a difficult choice. Or I'll give up all this, I'm going to become this and focus on it. And there may be some individuals who are able to do both. There are. But they find their own creative ways. I don't have them.
I have one answer that I really want to give, and I disagree that being unmarried is being fortunate. Yes. So let me start from there. I seriously believe that my life is what it is because of the work, because of my husband, my family, and my friends. So my personal journey on work-life balance led me to an understanding that I am not good at balance. I can't cut something to make it better. So my personal journey has been about work-life maximization. It's come with effort. It's come with wanting to do more. You can't balance it. When you say balance, you mean something has to be cut for something to happen. And instinctively, I don't believe in cutting. So I struggled with that balance thought, which means, I will sacrifice this. I'm not that kind of person. So for me, it works by maximizing. And through 25 years of work, forget family, forget work, I have maximized friendships. So it's possible to do. It's about what you want to do in life. And for me, that one word helped me. I don't know if it helps you or not, but it comes from wanting A and B and C and D. As long as you want, you will find a way for it. So that's what I have to say to you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Archana. So I thank you all for giving so many insights. Maybe over a period of time, I have got bits of my answer as well. So my question first is, I would like to know if my question would come under the scope of self-development. I would start, if you have seen the movie Avengers, in that you have Hulk. When Loki releases, the other terrestrial people to come in, so he'll start walking towards them in a calm demeanor. And she'll ask, don't you have to be angry to attack them? He's going to say, that's the key, I'm always angry. So he transforms into Hulk immediately. So I want to start from here. Why is, we all have our demons, we all have our vulnerabilities, and we are defensive about as well, because nobody wants to show that I'm weak. So when you talk about self-development, what does that have to do here? Do you compartmentalize your demons? Do you let go of them? Do you accept it and do you live with it?
Self-development is keep asking these questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Poonam Purohit, and since last 5 years, I'm into in research only on Indian management concept. So, on the basis of everyone, that we all have problems. He was that person talking about that how he is going to manage work-life balance at family and at professional level. So I want to ask this question from Professor Reddy, because you have gone through so many workshops, you have read so many literatures also, Indian ancient wisdom also. So I want to ask you on everyday basis, what we have to do to control our mind, and so that we'll not have to discuss about that ego problem, or somebody has abused me, that I'm very hurt, or somebody is acknowledging me and I'm very overwhelmed. So we have every day, what should we do so that our mind will be balanced on a daily basis?
Interesting question. I don't have quick answers, but I'll try and answer. Yes. Yeah, as I said, I'm still in LKG. Yeah. So a few things I can say. If it is possible at all, if I am getting provoked, if I notice I'm getting provoked or getting irritated or angry, can I take a few deep breaths and watch myself? If possible, close my eyes and watch myself calmly breathing. And some people say count from 10 to 1, not 1 to 10. When you do this, it helps you to give that extra few seconds to not react, and switches from, I talked about the three brain components, the reptilian, the mammalian, and from the reactive, the reptilian response, reaction to, okay, what should I do? Should I walk away? Should I smile? Should I shout? I choose and I respond. So it's much more likely that I will find a better way of coping with it if I can learn to detach myself even for a few seconds. It's not always possible, because the program takes over many times. But at least out of 10 times, if earlier the program was taking over 8 times, and you could only once or twice you could exercise your freedom of choice and able to respond appropriately, if you learn to cultivate awareness, what people call meditation, that word itself puts off some people. They remember parents forcing you to do something, or some other word. But to me, the word awareness is better. Can I be aware of myself, my thoughts, my feelings, my bodily sensations? The more aware I am, and learn to detach from the reactive tendencies, the better I can respond. It's something one has to practice, and only minor increments over many months and years happens. little bit, I think each one of us can learn. These are some of the things I practice. And I told my daughter once, you're going to give a speech. Think they're all puppies. When if you can visualize they're all puppies, something happens to you inside. You start feeling differently. So there are these methods of visualization which can help. And I frequently spend this half an hour yoga nidra. I like Swami Niranjanananda, there is a Bihar School of Yoga. It is a wonderful way of de-stressing, relaxing, and in a way letting go of some of the repressed emotions. So these are some of the things. Or do mantra japa, if you are a believer in that. To me, mantra japa is not about some esoteric something. It's a way of learning to focus your mind and to let go of repressed thoughts which are clouding your mind. It is about self-development and not some other, something else.
Okay, yeah. Last couple of questions, then we'll have to wind up. Yeah.
I have a question.
Maybe we can hear you. Maybe we can hear you.
Okay. Sure. I all right. I'm reminded of, Alcoholics Anonymous has some, prayer. They say, I forget exact words. It says, God, give me the wisdom
to solve the
Sanjay,
things
can
I
you
can.
say whatever it is?
Yes.
Kind of remember, give me the strength to change the things I can.
Yes.
And
Acceptance
accept
of
the things
I
can't, and the wisdom to know the
difference.
difference.
To me, that's it. It's very powerful. I need to figure out what I can change. I need to figure out what I cannot change. And
the wisdom to know the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And very quickly, Professor, the fact that he feels the fear is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I mean, you are human. We are all human. You need to feel fear, but then face it.
Very.
Isn't it?
I offer a course, in which course the prescribed text is called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Absolutely. And then
Susan Jeffers.
Do the thing you fear the most, and the death of fear is certain.
Fear is useful.
Yeah. It is.
When it is not excessive.
Exactly.
Any other question?
Yeah, I have one here. My question is to Professor Reddy again. How does one master the Western approaches to personal development as an NLP, TA, and other things? To what extent the formality matters in getting educated? Does the education...
Formality, you mean degrees and certificates?
The kind of approaches that are required.
Those are good for some training sessions or something. Otherwise, you don't need degrees and certificates, but you need to learn.
The learning part. So how does one acquaint...
There are schools which NLP, you have to attend programs.
Yeah.
There are associations which teach transaction analysis. Even in Bangalore there are. So you have to go through the formal education. There are, like Sanjay was talking about, human process labs, Indian Society for Applied Behavioral Sciences. There are similarly other associations which help you. So each one, you have to go through. It's not so much of certification, but they are the people who help you to, or you can do. Books alone may not be enough. Some things you can learn through books. Some things you have to go through.
Program.
Yeah. When NIMHANS conducts programs, where you can attend?
Thank you.
You just need to follow their website.
Yeah. Yes.
This can't.
We talked about this self-development, right? So in the ancient Indian scriptures...
Let go of the self. There is no self.
No,
recognize.
Is there anything called like community development concepts? Like
okay.
See, for example, you talked about all four, which is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita for self-development. But is there anything called community development in the olden scripts?
I think there they talk about dharma as a means of preserving social order. You call community development. It's a means of maintaining harmony in the society. My understanding is each one of us have to fulfill certain duties and responsibilities in order that the whole system functions. And that is the way they have conceptualized the ancient community development, or I call social order. The struggle for us, which I have encountered and I have seen others encounter, is the oughts or the dharma or the duties versus my own personal goals, my sense of passions, etc. How do I balance between the two? And if I see Ramayana and Mahabharata, I see Ramayana as epitomizing the duties, the oughts, Rama as the king, Sita as the wife. These are the duties and responsibilities. Subordinate yourself, the so-called ego, whatever, completely for the sake of the role. On the other hand, Mahabharata epitomizes the struggles of each one to deal with the internal demons, as she was calling. And I think both together help us to understand the nature of the human behavior. So one is about transcendence, the other is about maintaining social order, social equilibrium, and therefore harmony. Where am I in this? Yeah, Sanjay.
Just going to add, if you are on a journey of self-development, you'll be surprised how much development starts happening around you. So to me, it's really about taking responsibility for yourself. Just like right now we are sitting here listening to others and learning from it, because each one of us has taken that journey ourselves. So the community development to me is really an outcome and feeds into each other.
Yeah, to just add, I remember this great person called Goenka, not Ramnath, what is his name? The other Vipassana. Satyanarayan Goenka, mentioning, they asked some similar question. You're all focusing on so much on self. What about suffering of other people, and why are you focusing on self? Isn't it selfish? He said, if you are calm and quiet and peaceful, if you are internally free, the way you can communicate, connect to other people, you will do a far better job. If you are disturbed, agitated and angry and hurt, whatever you do there is going to reflect this. So first to overcome this, then you can do that. I mean, it made a lot of sense. It doesn't mean don't care about the rest of the world. That's not implied. Yeah.
I think we have come to the end of the session. The last few thoughts, if you wish to share, the panelists, before we end the session, any last few thoughts? Okay. Not the audience, the panelists, anything that you wish to.
I have nothing more. Okay. Thank you.
I have just one, I just have one comment to add to the gentleman who's late for lunch, who said, Narayan, somebody.
He is gone.
He's left.
No, he's here.
No, he's here.
He's here. Very much here.
One, he's a little late already, but your name, sir? Srinivasan. In any relationship, one person is always right, another person is the husband. Right.
Is Sanjay, any last thoughts, anything?
Actually, all I wanted was to probably say what I learned and I'll remember from today, and really thank you for the Navarasas. So Shanta Rasa, as you said, is not the absence of a rasa, but the combination of all rasas. So it's almost like not giving up, but combining everything. Thank you for leaving that thought behind. Thank you. So even sitting here, there's so much learning from having heard across the group. Thank you for the very engaging participation.
I just want to end with a favorite couplet of mine in Urdu. So, दोस्त है तू नसीहत न दे खुदा के लिए, दोस्त है तू नसीहत न दे खुदा के लिए, मेरा ज़मीर ही काफ़ी है मेरी सज़ा के लिए. So as long as each one of us, it is self, right? And there are at least 60 selves in this room, if not more. And so each one of us will have our own path, and if this has ignited something within you, follow it.
Very well said. Thank you very much. I hope it just doesn't remain an intellectual exercise. I hope this triggers a little bit of curiosity and a small step towards your own journeys in your self-development. That's what I wish for and I hope. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The professor ended it very well. It's like Bhagavad Gita, it's an acharana grantha. You need to practice it, it's not at the theoretical level. Thank you all. Thank you once again, Sanjay, Jay, Anu, and Professor CMR. It's been an absolute pleasure having you all out here. The audience too, please give them a big hand. For the audience.
Yes. You guys rock.